continuing with the third Go Show from Volume 1 of Teachings for Victory. It's the Supremacy of the Law. This is Part 3, the last section. And the next week, thank you, Celine, we'll be going to the three treasures. And so, three kinds of treasure. So tonight, it starts on page 145. Again, since we've already read the whole Go Show, and we're going to read it section by section as we go through, I'm not going to read what's in the initial gray boxes. As it starts on page 143, we're going to go straight to 145. Everybody's with me?
Yep.
I got a little bit of a sniffly thing going here. If I have to blow my nose, excuse me. Okay, starts out. Lecture. Everybody's with me on 145, right?
Yes.
Okay. The mentor-disciple relationship is the foundation of Nichiren Buddhism. When mentor and disciple are united in purpose, they can accomplish anything. In both our human revolution and in the challenge to establish the correct teaching for the peace of the land, steadfastly adhering to the path of mentor and disciple is the direct path to absolute victory. Now, why is that such a correct statement? What's the significance of the statement where he says the mentor-disciple relationship is the foundation of Nichiren Buddhism?
The translation is not the same.
I know, and I could care less about your translation, frankly. Bozo the Clown may have done that for all I know.
Yeah.
This is from Daisaku Ikeda and the study department. I know that for sure. Okay, so the mentor-disciple relationship is the foundation of Nichiren Buddhism. Why? How did Nichiren Buddhism get started? Think about it. You know, President Ikeda doesn't do like hyperbole throwaway sentences. They all have depth. But if you don't think about what he just said, they have no depth. Okay? So, once again, the mentor-disciple relationship is the foundation of Nichiren Buddhism. Why is that so?
Because of propagation.
Not only because of propagation. Again, yes, because of propagation. But what's the predication of why that has to do with propagation? Let's go back to the original teacher, the Daishonin. If it weren't for Nikko Shonin, Nikko, that's the original mentor-disciple relationship, right? Plus all of his other disciples. He was the mentor-disciple relationship. Shijo Kingo. All the people were writing, Lei Nietzsche, the Lei Nun Nichimyo that we're reading about right now. That's a reflection of the mentor-disciple relationship. Okay? That's the only reason we can read these words from the Daishonin, because he was teaching someone else. And because he was teaching someone else, the correct teaching was passed on. Okay? So that's what President Ikeda is qualifying there. This isn't about the mentor-disciple relationship is the foundation of Buddhism. You're all my disciples. I'm your mentor. I'm the foundation of Nichiren Buddhism. He's not saying anything like that. He's talking about the actual reality of fact as it relates to this belief set. Okay? You with me?
Yeah.
He says when the mentor and disciple are united in purpose, they can accomplish anything. I mean, that's the same thing that relates to Nichiren's time. How did Nichiren survive? It was through those disciples that supported him. How did he support them back? By sharing and establishing the correct teaching and how he encouraged them. And because of that, we now have those teachings available to us for our own lives so that we can understand them and become mentors ourselves as well. You don't stay a disciple forever, or you miss the whole point of mentor-disciple. In reality, if you stay a disciple forever, you never were part of a mentor. You never had a mentor. Because there's no mentor that won't be teaching you. If they're a real mentor, they're trying to establish you as a mentor. They're not looking for a freaking fan club, okay, or alms. Okay, that's not a mentor. That's a priest. All right?
Yes.
When mentor and disciple are united in purpose, they can accomplish anything in both our own human revolution and in the challenge to establish the correct teaching for the peace of the land. What's that? Come on. Is anybody listening to me? What's the challenge to establish the correct teaching for the peace of the land? And I thought I was slow tonight. That's Kosen Rufu, right?
Yeah.
Rishon Kokoran title is Kosen Rufu, right? Steadfastly adhering to the path of mentor-disciple is the direct path to absolute victory. Why? Because instead of having to rely on your own thinking, which may or may not be well-informed and understanding, you have someone to help guide you in a direction that allows you to bring forth that wisdom and understanding from your own life. It's never about somebody telling you something and then all you did was take their word for it and it's stuck there. That isn't the way this works, because what's the intermediary of all this, of this mentor-disciple relationship? The Gohonzon, the original mentor. Okay, so there's no way for you to learn anything from a mentor that won't also involve your relationship with the Gohonzon for it to manifest in your life in a function of creating Buddha wisdom, leading you towards Buddhahood in your present form. Do you understand? Okay, so that's how loaded that first paragraph was. I'm going to read it through one more and keep going. But again, all of this is that deep. The mentor-disciple relationship is the foundation of Nichiren Buddhism. When mentor and disciple are united in purpose, they can accomplish anything. In both our own human revolution and in the challenge to establish the correct teaching for the peace of the land, steadfastly adhering to the path of mentor and disciple is the direct path to absolute victory. The Lotus Sutra, continuing in the second paragraph, first column, page 145. The Lotus Sutra speaks of following and learning from these teachers of the law. So what did that just say? This is directly from the Teacher of the Law chapter, the 10th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. One of my favorites in the theoretical teaching, the first 14 chapters. Why? Because it talks about me. It talks about me. I can go into that chapter and it's first person to me. Now, you're the only one that makes that so. You're the only one that decides to take that vow. You're the only one that can have the audacity to view yourself as having that potential. You're the only one that can make the determination that you must teach others rather than just practice and follow along. There's a huge difference, guys. And there's a huge difference in the level of benefit that you will occur in your life. And there's a huge difference in how many victories, whether you're going to win or lose, whether you're going to practice to the end of your life, as to whether or not that occurs. The Lotus Sutra speaks of following and learning from these teachers of the law. So how many teachers of the law are there? Many, 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 many. We're not talking about one dude and one other person as a mentor-disciple relationship. That's why I keep trying to tell you, he's not talking about, I'm Daisaku Ikeda talking to all my disciples. Okay? You determine whether or not he's your mentor and whether you qualify as a disciple. And then if you don't, then what he says about that doesn't apply to you because you're not there. It's not your mindset. It's not how you view yourself in front of the Gohonzon. Okay? So it's all up to you. It's not up to anybody outside of you. Okay. He says, to have the opportunity to follow an exemplary teacher of Kosen Rufu and learn about the tenets and practice of Buddhism, surely there is no greater happiness in life than this. With this spirit, I dedicated myself to serving and supporting my mentor, second Soka Gakkai president, Josei Toda. Now, I wasn't tight with any president of the Soka Gakkai, but I was tight with dudes that were definitely Buddhas in their present form. They all considered Daisaku Ikeda to be their mentor. That's what they told me when they taught me way back when in 1973, 74 through the 70s, let's say, the first 7 years or so of my life. By then I had met Mr. Osaki as well. I've mentioned Lloyd Sewell. I've had many mentors, but again, without them there, and the trust and the relationship I had with them, I could have not made the leaps of understanding that allowed me to have the solid faith in front of the Gohonzon to then manifest the Buddha nature and the fortune that allowed me to have the mind-blowing benefits that I had in my life. that couldn't tear me away from this practice no matter how many obstacles I encountered. Because such weird, crazy, wonderful miracles had occurred. Now, was that all because of me? Yes. Why? Because I had taken faith in the word of another in order to establish the faith in my own life that information allowed me to. That's what the mentor's there for. He's, again, like I said, it's an expedient means for you to make it to the end. He says, last paragraph, first column. One profoundly encouraging aspect of the path of mentor and disciple as taught in Buddhism is that the mentors themselves manifest and embody the essence of the Buddhist teachings in their own lives as ordinary human beings. And all the dudes that did this for me were all ordinary human beings. But they sure as hell also embodied the essence of this in their lives. Okay? They were full-blown Nam-myoho Renge-kyo people. They were not casual practitioners throwing off or riffing some ideas that they come up with on their own. Okay? They were teachers of the law, frankly. He says, continuing, page 145, second at the top, by setting a personal example of the dignity and nobility inherent in human life, they inspire others and spur them to walk the same illustrious path. Now, I didn't do that right away. I didn't do that for decades after I had had those experiences. But that example had been there, and that's what I grew into. He says, following the lead of the mentors, these awakened disciples. Now, what's an awakened disciple? Somebody that's on the path to becoming a mentor. When you're awakened, you don't sit there and do it for yourself. You're now doing it for Kosen Rufu. That just made you a mentor. All right? Following the lead of the mentors, those guys had that mindset. I dug them. I thought that they were they were heavy-duty dudes. And I wanted to be like Mike. I wanted to be like them. I never wanted to be like Daisaku Ikeda. I wanted to be like Mr. Matsuoka and Mr. Osaki. I didn't know enough about President Ikeda yet. I didn't have a personal relationship with him. He's talking about his personal relationship with Josei Toda. I didn't have that, but I had mentors. Absolutely, we all do, and we all choose who they are. Following the lead of the mentors, because those people take you on a path. They set the course for where you're going to go from when you met them and how much time you spent with them. He says, awaken to the same spirit to take action to make a difference in the world. They make you a bodhisattva of the earth with the mission to propagate the law in the latter day to establish the will of the original teacher, Kosen Rufu. As long as we carry on the noble cause and struggles of our mentors in faith, I'm doing it. Buddhism will continue to spread throughout the world and illuminate people's hearts as a teaching for the enlightenment of all humankind. So that involves all of us, though, because this has got to continue. This has got to continue and continue and continue. So that's why I'm speaking to everybody that might listen to me talking tonight. You all must become mentors. You all must become mentors. That's the reason we practice. We don't practice to get benefits. We have practiced to attain Buddhahood in our present form. If we accomplish that, we are going to be expressing the function of mentor. All right? The supremacy of the law can be viewed as a writing. Am I coming off too hard here? Okay. The supremacy of the law can be viewed as a writing in which Nichiren Daishonin outlines the struggle he was waging against the entire country of Japan. At the time this letter was written, news of the death and destruction wrought by the Mongol invasion had spread throughout the land, leaving everyone terrified at the prospect of a second invasion. This letter contained the Daishonin's bold assertion that it was time for the whole populace, gripped by fear and anxiety, to accept a truly humanistic philosophy as its mainstay. What's he saying there? What's he talking about? If you think it's audacious for me to be sitting here and allowing myself to be recorded in a way that it can be broadcast everywhere, It's nothing compared to Nichiren Daishonin as a single individual telling his entire country, you've misunderstood the sutras, and here's the correct teaching. And by the way, no matter what you do, it's going to achieve a national embracing, and it's going to last way beyond my lifetime. That's pretty audacious stuff. I mean, that's outrageous stuff.
Yeah.
So he says, this letter contained the Daishonin's bold assertion that it was time for the whole populace, gripped by fear and anxiety, to accept a truly humanistic philosophy as its mainstay.
Yeah.
Many in society probably assumed that Nichiren, having moved to Mount Minobu, had retired from the world, but this was incorrect. He had never let up in his spiritual struggle. On the contrary, through his example, he taught his disciples the dauntless spirit of ceaseless challenge to the very end. It must have been extremely inspiring for his followers to learn this from his undiminished fighting spirit through his letters. His spiritual vigor and dynamism would have left a deep and lasting impression in their hearts. No doubt Nichimyo, the recipient of this letter, was inspired to practice with fresh determination in response to the Daishonin's urging that she always advance together with him, come what may. And that's the other thing. We can all have that same attitude, because even if there's no one listening to us, we're in front of the Gohonzon. We're not alone. We're never alone in the process of striving for Kosen Rufu. As long as we chant Daimoku to the Gohonzon, we are combined with the most influential force in the universe. Nothing ahead of us can be seen until it occurs, but we can make the cause for it to occur and know that it shall. Always, you're never alone. You're never alone. In the Supremacy of the Law, continuing middle of page 146, Nichiren teaches us a crucial key to faith for persevering on the path of the oneness of mentor and disciple. In other words, of becoming a Buddha in your present form. That's what you learn from a mentor. Namely, continuously working to strengthen our resolve, to keep this up until the last moment of our life. Continuing on 146, repeatedly strengthening our resolve causes our benefit to multiply. No matter whom you may marry, if he is an enemy of the Lotus Sutra, you must not follow him. Strengthen your resolve more than ever. Ice is made of water, but it is colder than water. Blue dye comes from indigo, but when something is dyed repeatedly in it, the color is better than that of the indigo plant. The Lotus Sutra remains the same, but if you repeatedly strengthen your resolve, your color will be better than that of others, and you will receive more blessings than they do. So what did that just say? I'll say it again. He says, the Lotus Sutra remains the same. The opportunity is the same for everyone. But if you repeatedly strengthen your resolve, which means you repeatedly go back to the prime source of chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon, your color will be better than that of others, and you will receive more blessings than they do. You will see the effect of that in benefits in your daily life. Faith in the mystic law serves as our compass for navigating the rough seas of life and society. So what's faith in the mystic law? Is that believing in it? No, that's doing it. That means chanting Daimoku and trying to influence others and study. Faith, practice, study. Living as we do in the defiled age of the latter day of the law, it is all the more important that we are not swayed by negative influences, but make faith the center of our daily life and existence. What are negative influences? Yeah, but more specifically. Anything that takes us out of the mindset I just previously described. Okay? Anything that keeps us from understanding what President Ikeda just wrote there for you to understand. All right? And living it. Nichiren Daishonin tells Nichimyo that no matter whom one marries, that partner should not be followed in matters of faith, if he or she is opposed to the Lotus Sutra's teaching. So you don't marry somebody that's a Catholic and become Catholic. You shakabuku them to become a believer in the Daishonen's teachings. That's what he's talking about. If they're doing whatever, if you love them enough to marry them, even if they don't chant, you have to do that knowing that it's your job to get them to chant. Somehow, at a minimum, you have to at least be somebody so correct that they cannot attack your belief set and say, see, it doesn't work. See, it's no better than what I'm doing. You must be the living example of it being better than what they're doing. They may never take faith, but they must because they have a relationship with you. Okay? And that'll carry over into the next life. That's why you married him in this life. Okay? So, he says that true happiness will forever elude us if we lose sight of the correct path of faith. So, again, we screw ourselves if we allow spouses to influence our correct understanding of the correct teaching and our endeavor to be bodhisattvas of the earth. Next, he urges Nichimyo to strengthen her resolve and faith more than ever. By maintaining strong faith, we can turn back the tide of any adversity. That is why developing an ever stronger foundation in faith is the ultimate source of victory. So why is it the source of victory? Because it's ever expanding. It's like working out forever. It's like getting bigger and bigger and bigger muscles. Okay? He says then, Nichiren then cites, and that's where I'm at, right?
Yeah.
Nichiren then cites examples from the natural world. Ice, for instance, is frozen water, but it is very different from water in terms of hardness and coldness. Blue dye, meanwhile, comes from the leaves of the indigo plant. The fabric or yarn repeatedly soaked in that dye will become a shade of blue, much deeper than the color of the leaves. Drawing parallel with these phenomena, the Daishonin writes, the Lotus Sutra remains the same, but if you repeatedly strengthen your resolve, your color will be better than that of others, and you will receive more blessings than they do. As these words indicate, through faith that grows ever stronger, that doesn't mean until you've practiced 20 years and then you've got it licked and you don't have to go any stronger. This is ever stronger means to the last moment of your life. That's what that's talking about. All right? Through faith that grows ever stronger, we will enjoy increasing energy and vibrancy both mentally and physically, while benefit will manifest itself even ever more clearly in our lives. By repeatedly strengthening our faith, we can bring forth the indestructible, diamond-like state of Buddhahood within us. How do we do that? How do we create that indestructible, diamond-like state of Buddhahood? By repeatedly strengthening our faith, we can bring forth the indestructible, diamond-like state of Buddhahood within us. I already told you what the teaching is. How do you create that diamond-like body? By protecting the law. Okay, by protecting the law. So by repeatedly strengthening your faith, you become fearless in the process of protecting the law. You become a votary of the Lotus Sutra. Okay, that's what allows you to protect the law. That's how you create the indestructible diamond-like state of Buddha that already exists within you. You've got to bring it forth through action. This isn't about believing stuff. Nichiren uses analogies such as the following to describe this great transformation of the individual. Wood is vulnerable to fire, but sandalwood cannot be burned. Fire is extinguished by water, but the fire that cremated the Buddha's remains could not be quenched. Although flowers are scattered by the wind, those that bloom in the heavens of purity do not wither. By continually reaffirming our commitment to faith, which means doing Gongyo every day, chanting Daimoku every day, even though we've been doing it for years and years and years, our faith in this transient existence become adorned with the everlasting and indestructible treasures of eternity, happiness, true self, and purity. That's Buddhahood in every lifetime. Constantly fortifying our faith. Constantly fortifying it. Never letting it weaken so that the devils can attack and succeed in those attacks. Constantly fortifying our faith becomes the key to establishing such a state of life. So President Kate is trying to let you know, if you want to make this to the end of your life, you're going to have to go through a process that requires great effort. Repeatedly strengthening one's resolve or faith, therefore, means persevering in one's Buddhist practice. What does persevering in one's Buddhist practice mean? Persevering means never giving up, no matter what's happening. Okay? So he's basically saying, repeatedly strengthening one's resolve or faith, therefore, means persevering in one's Buddhist practice. It means being undaunted by obstacles, or rather using obstacles as an impetus to summon forth even stronger faith and polish one's life even more. So what's that saying then? The perseverance in faith should not be about putting up with shit endlessly. It should be about defeating it. It should be about expressing the power of your faith for the purpose of influencing others. Okay? That's being a bodhisattva of the earth. We don't just put up with shit. That's not what he's talking about when he says persevering. He's saying, let me say it again, repeatedly strengthening one's resolve or faith, chanting Daimoku every day for the sake of your attainment of Buddhahood in your present form and the establishment of Kosen Rufu in the latter day means persevering in one's Buddhist practice. That's what that is. It means being undaunted by obstacles, saying, screw them, I'm going to kick their ass. Not ever being afraid, not ever being defeated, having that victory of gold that faith brings. He says it means being, or rather using obstacles as an impetus to summon forth even stronger faith and to polish one's life even more. It means going to the Gohonzon with those problems and solving them, okay, by expressing the desire to see that change for the sake of everybody else. If you chant Daimoku to overcome your problems for the sake of becoming a shining example of the power of the law, for the sake of Kosen Rufu, it is a completely different prayer than going to the Gohonzon and saying, I want this.
Right.
Fix this. Why is this happening?
Right.
Completely different. One is going to the Gohonzon and chanting Daimoku as a common mortal, and the other one is chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon as a Buddha. Okay? Period. And the difference, the indigo thing, he's saying, you're the one that's going to get all the freaking great benefits.
Yes.
When nobody else around you can get seems to get the kind of benefits you get. Always understand there's a reason for that. That's not because you're special. That's because you're doing what's necessary for that to be the case. Okay? And those that are not resolved to dauntlessly overcome those things that are in their way, because they're looking to get them out of their way for their own sake, not as a bodhisattva of the earth, being an emissary of the Buddha, being an example, or an individual who only came to this earth in order to propagate the teaching. If you're a bodhisattva of the earth, why did you make your advent? For Kosen Rufu, it wasn't to drive a Beamer, it wasn't to be getting laid, it wasn't to be a rock star. It was to propagate Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Now, you could be driving a Beamer, you can be getting laid, and you can be a rock star, and you can still be all this. But you got to understand what the real purpose in life is. That'll all come as a consequence of that correct thinking. He says, while all of us who practice Nichiren Buddhism embrace faith in the same Lotus Sutra, the mystic law, and the Gohonzon, it is the strength of our faith that determines the outcome. So who gets benefits and who don't get benefits isn't up to anything more than what they're doing when they're practicing. How are they practicing? And most importantly, why are they practicing? The stronger the faith we summon, the greater the benefits we will experience. And the more expansive and fulfilled the life state we will achieve. Because wisdom is going to constantly be filling in every bit of the way there. Every time you make advance, your Buddha nature becomes stronger and more evident. And your mind becomes more and more clear. You know, you hear me talking this way with this conviction and clarity right now. That wasn't always the way I talked. I talked pretty good. but I didn't talk like this. Okay? Because I didn't have the life experience of doing it to be able to say it with the conviction that I can now. That's the difference between me and 20 or 30 years ago. All right? So he's saying, aware, and that's what President Kane is talking about. Don't look at your life right now. Go for it and see what happens. And what you'll see is that you grow into something that you never thought was possible. Someone that you never thought was possible. That's just a fact. He says, the stronger the faith we summon, the greater the benefits we will experience, and the more expansive and fulfilled the life state we will achieve. Aware of this truth, our members around the world show wonderful actual proof of the power of faith, or they should be. Throughout this writing, the Daishonin calls on his followers, because there are members that are members of the Soka Gakkai, and they do not show that proof. That's just an unfortunate reality. That's a fact. It doesn't come from becoming a member of the Soka Gakkai. It comes from mentor-disciple perception of the wisdom of the truth, the correct teaching. Throughout his writings, the Daishonin calls on his followers to ceaselessly forge their faith. What did that mean? What's forging? Right. Forging into the fire and the hammering and all that shit. All the shit. Ceaselessly forge. Ceaselessly forge. That means you don't stop. It means you get off on it. You start to have a little bit of a twisted... Yeah, because I know what I'm doing is the right thing, and I know where this is going to take me. No matter what I'm experiencing in this moment, I know where this is going to take me. So, doubt-free faith. Where does doubt-free faith come from? It actually comes not from just buying into believing something. Doubt-free faith comes from your experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's where doubt-free faith comes from.
Yes.
Doubt-free faith comes from always seeing that the Gohonzon never lets you down if you'll only continue long enough to see the result.
You always win.
Rather than determine from your own feeble mind when that result should be. Yes. Or why did this happen to me? Other good things happen when that, great good always follows great evil. It's just a fact. Okay, and it's also the teaching. All right? So, for example, he says to Shijo Kingo, strengthen the power of your faith, strengthen your power of faith more than ever from happiness in this world. And you must summon up the great power of faith more than ever from the strategy of the Lotus Sutra. He also praised the lay nun Kubo for her ever-strengthening faith from the false official documents Gosho from WND2. He says, while encouraging the lay nun Ueno to strive even more earnestly in faith. Faith, 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 faith. That's what it's all about, because what does faith really mean? Do, 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 do. Follow the mentor, follow the mentor, follow the mentor. That's all contained in the same word, faith, 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 faith. All right? In this way, Nichiren urges even followers of exemplary faith to keep strengthening their resolve all the more. Why? Because you're going to get attacked by bigger and bigger devils trying to knock you off that horse. You become a trophy if they can nail you. All right? So you have to becoming stronger, because no matter how strong you are at any given moment, you may not be strong enough for what you may be faced with as a challenge. So you don't take that for granted. You're going for the Arnold Schwarzenegger look. Okay? That's the power we're trying to get. He says, put another way, the spirit to keep striving even harder is the essence of faith and the fundamental key to practicing Nichiren Buddhism. Why? It's the only thing that's going to guarantee that you can make it to the last moment of your life. Because we don't know what diseases will hit us later. We don't know what kind of obstacles we have cooked up for ourselves through our actions in the past. He says, both at the very bottom of page 147, both Nichiren and Shakyamuni exerted themselves with an ever-fresh and unflagging commitment, living with a fighting spirit to the very end. To the very end means to the end of their life. The same can be said of Tanesaburo Makaguchi and Josei Toda. the first two Soka Gakkai presidents. And I now want to teach this essential spirit of faith to my disciples. And he's saying now, again, if you consider me your mentor, Daisaku Ikeda is saying, I want you to take to heart what I'm saying. That's why I'm writing this. I'm writing this to those of you that will listen to me and understand what I'm saying. And not all of you will, because I won't be the mentor to all of you. But to those of you that understand me as the mentor, please understand this teaching and this understanding that I'm trying to share with you. Life, he continues, in one sense, is a constant battle against deadlock. What did that just say? The shit never stops. Okay? The battle against deadlock, the deadlock is when you've been defeated. Deadlock means not moving forward. Deadlock means fear and trepidation and a lack of courage. Deadlock means not having confidence in your prayer anymore or the power of the Gohonzon, where your faith and practice. All right? So life in one sense is a constant battle against not going Titan. As long as we are alive, as long as we continue challenging ourselves, difficult obstacles will block our way forward. So he's guaranteeing you that the shit's going to happen. All right? So when it happens, don't go, why is this happening? Actually, if it didn't happen, then you're not doing this correctly. All right? He says, if life were all smooth sailing, if we never encountered setbacks, that itself would be a sign of stagnation. Why? Because if we don't get any setbacks or obstacles, then the devils aren't attacking us. And if the devils aren't attacking us, we're not making our way towards Buddhahood. Okay? That's called stagnation. We got stopped at a spot. Do you understand? And a lot of people do. A lot of people. 2, 3 decades of practice faith, they got life whipped. They don't continue to grow. They don't even try. They think they've got life whipped. They think the whole point was to have an easy street existence. Okay? But what did Daisaku Ikeda just say? He said that the easy street existence is not the path. That's not the way it's supposed to work. That's why I have so many stars around this paragraph, because I've lived this. I know this is true. He says, I am reminded of my time in my youth when Mr. Toda's business fell into financial crisis, and I worked desperately to solve the situation. On seeing how exhausted I was by my efforts, Mr. Toda encouraged me, saying, faith is a never-ending battle against deadlock. So what he just told you actually came from Josei Toda. It is a struggle between the Buddha and devilish functions, as I just explained it to you, between negative and positive forces, as I've experienced it. He says, that is why we say Buddhism is about winning. Do you understand? Yeah. All right. All of us at times feel stuck or at an impasse in our lives or undertakings. Don't be discouraged when you feel that. That's part of the deal. But that won't stay that way if you'll go get in front of the Gohonzon and chant sincere Daimoku with a mind of faith. Okay? So it's okay to feel that. To not do anything about it is a real problem. All right? He says, but it is precisely when we are deadlocked that our faith is put to the test. Did you go get in front of the Gohonzon? Did you whip the ass of this devilish function, or did you give into it? Did you let it lull you into the complacency of taking a few days off from Gongyo and Daimoku and let you feel sorry about yourself? Okay? You won't keep advancing. You'll keep going. This is the advance you'll have. You'll go forward, you'll go backward. You'll go forward, you'll go backward. You'll go forward, you'll go backward. Are you advancing? Yeah, only to stop and go backwards. That's not really going forward. Okay? You can say for half the time I'm going forward, but you got to then admit for half the time you're going backwards. Okay? He says, such a time represents a decisive moment to seize victory. Because if you can break through that bullshit, you can teach yourself how to always break through it over and over and over again. The important thing is to always keep our minds focused on moving forward. The challenge of triumphing over obstacles will itself become the cause for substantially expanding our state of life. Because we train ourselves through our own experience. It's not just a bunch of writing now. At that point in time, it becomes our actual experience as individuals. If we actively grapple with our problems, we can definitely change inside and transform our karma. I did it. I changed inside. I was not who you know. None of you know who I really am. Really, you don't. Okay? That's a good thing. Okay? We can definitely change inside. And what happened then? When I changed inside, I transformed my karma. So people don't know that Tom anymore. They don't have any clue that that Tom existed even. Well, maybe a little bit of one because of the way I talk. But the truth is, this will happen naturally. Did I try to change inside? Not really. I just never gave up. I just never gave up. And before I knew it, I had changed inside. And my karma had been transformed. I became a dad. I became a faithful husband. I became all kinds of things I could never be before. I could be rich and famous before. But I couldn't be who I really wanted to be, which was a genuine teacher of the law. That's what I wanted to be from the beginning of my practice. I want to be Seisen Doji, man. So anytime we become stuck then, he's saying, which we all will, is actually an opportunity to realize victory, and ever stronger faith is what gives us the power to break through such deadlocks. This is true both in terms of our individual struggles and the larger struggles of society. Continuing on page 148, second column. Broadly speaking, and I underline broadly speaking, deadlock arising on the level of society, the economy, or a country as a whole points to a clear limitation of the ideals or philosophy that guide or underlie them. In fact, it is at such times that a new philosophy emerges. The burgeoning of powerful new ideas can transform deadlock into an opportunity to build a better society. So what did that just say? He says, no matter how shitty things are in society and the environment around us, understand this is the opportunity to establish Kosen Rufu. Okay? This is the time where we can take the change in our life and start to have it impact our environment. Shakyamuni says, hasten to do good, restrain your mind from evil. The mind of one who is sluggish about doing good finds amusement in evil. And you won't find that in the Lotus Sutra. That's from a different sutra that President Ikeda is quoting from Shakyamuni. He continues, page 148 in the middle. Everything lies before us. Everything comes down to an inner struggle, which is either going to be win or lose. It is one's mind, one's heart, that is important, because that's the mind of faith. That's the heart of the Bodhisattva of the earth. And then, look how I have this. Protecting the law. Those are big stars. Those are big stars. Protecting the law means steadfastly proclaiming the truth. The truth. Fearlessly. The people of, going back to the Gosho, the people of Japan, by becoming enemies of the Lotus Sutra, have brought ruin on themselves and their country. And because I proclaim this, I am called arrogant by those of little understanding. But I do not speak out of arrogance. And I'm not speaking out of arrogance tonight. If I sound arrogant, I apologize, but I'm not being. It is simply that if I did not speak out, I would not be the votary of the Lotus Sutra. I wouldn't be upholding my vow. Moreover, when my words prove later to be true, people will be able to believe all the more readily. And because I write this down now, the people of the future will recognize my wisdom. The Nirvana Sutra, top of page 149, states, rely on the law and not upon persons. Tayamadiya 21, there it is. Now let's talk about it. The Nirvana Sutra states, rely on the law and not upon persons. and this is from the conversation between a sage and an unenlightened man, the Gosho. Nichiren Daishonin always waged his struggle based on the law, and we are too. Even though we have mentors, we're basing it on our faith in the Gohonzon. The mentor is teaching us how to have that relationship with the Gohonzon. Accordingly, he was very strict about distinguishing between correct and erroneous Buddhist teachings. When considering a particular teaching, he would ask, he's talking about Nichiren Daishonin now, is this a correct teaching that seeks to actualize the Buddhist ideal of universal enlightenment, Kosen Rufu? Or is it an erroneous teaching that distorts this fundamental principle and causes people suffering? He clarified what was true and what was false, safeguarding the correct teaching and refuting erroneous teachings. This is the way in which Nichiren strove to protect the law, and how he embodied establishing that diamond-like body by protecting the law, by protecting the correct teaching. The people of Japan at the time, having been swayed by negative influences, discarded the Lotus Sutra and placed their faith in provisional Buddhist teachings that rejected the principle of universal enlightenment. Hence, Nichiren's lament, the people of Japan, by becoming enemies of the Lotus Sutra, have brought ruin on themselves and their country. If things continued as they were, the country would suffer complete destruction. To avert this catastrophe, he had remonstrated with the country's rulers and tirelessly proclaimed the truth, especially escalating his efforts after submitting his treatise on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. He was fully aware that his actions would invite great persecution, but this deterred him not in the least, because he was solely concerned with protecting the law and leading all people to enlightenment. So what does that tell you? How are you supposed to behave? The mentor is Nichiren. Okay, so how are you supposed to behave? Not worry about the consequence of speaking up when you profess the truth, protecting the truth, insisting that if you have a disagreement about what the truth is, you profess it. And also in that process, never underestimating the importance of what you're doing when you do that. Because when you do that, you are contributing to the enlightenment of all people. Kosen Rufu is something for everybody, not just about you. All right? So he says, one criticism leveled against Nichiren, top of page 149, second column, by his contemporaries was that he was arrogant or conceited. And when you take those positions, people are going to think that you're arrogant or conceited. All right? Don't worry about that. That's what he was just saying prior to that. That's why I have all those stars under that. He was not deterred in the least, but was solely concerned with protecting the law and leading all people to enlightenment. He was not arrogant or conceited. In the Supremacy of the Law, he writes, because I proclaim this truth, I am called arrogant by those of little understanding. And you can't help if people have little understanding and view you incorrectly. That's not your karma, that's their karma. Frankly, dwelling in an island country where people's thoughts were filled with jealousy, see how those initially aspiring the way, the Daishonin faced, from WND 870, page 873, the Daishonin faced a relentless storm of slander and abuse, but without retreating a step, he boldly continued to declare the truth. He rejects the criticism that he is arrogant, clarifying his intent. He points out first that the Lotus Sutra is the foremost teaching, and that if he failed to thoroughly warn people of the ruinous consequences their hostility to the sutra would have for the country, then he would not be its votary. To broadly proclaim the Lotus Sutra's greatness and take a firm stand against his enemies are the actions of a genuine votary. Those who lack this fighting spirit are ruled by fear, those who lack this fighting spirit and are ruled by fear do not qualify as votaries. And Teddy Laurent, you are a votary. Thank you so much for defending the correct teaching. Nichiren also rejects criticism from another perspective, explaining that he is motivated by the desire to chronicle the truth for the future. Leaving a written record of his predictions of internal strife and foreign invasion coming to pass would help people of future times appreciate his immense foresight and wisdom, and help them more readily accept his teaching. He clarifies, however, that the fulfillment of his predictions is not an indication of his own ability, but rather is proof of the accuracy of Buddhism's correct teaching. In the treatise, The Selection of the Time, Nichiren discusses the 3 times he gained distinction by having such prophetic knowledge. He writes, "It was not I, Nichiren, who made these 3 important pronouncements. Rather, it was in all cases the spirit of the thus come one Shakyamuni that had taken possession of my body, and having personally experienced this, I am beside myself with joy." If the truth were preserved, people of discernment and insight in later generations would surely applaud Nichiren's efforts and take actions in the same spirit. That's what we're trying to do. Successors to his spiritual legacy would carry on his work and create a groundswell of humanism led by ordinary people. That is the Soka Gakkai. And in fact, we of the SGI, sharing bonds of mentor and disciple with the first 3 presidents, have inherited Nichiren Daishonin's spirit. We have launched a movement of confident, awakened individuals dedicated to the cause of worldwide Kosen Rufu, the Buddha's wish and decree, a movement that is now an unstoppable force around the globe. Excuse me. And I know I'm going long, but I'm sorry. No matter what slander or criticism we might encounter, if we continue to speak out and leave a clear record of the truth, our victory will be assured. During the early years of the Soka Gakkai's history, the number of defamatory articles in the print media about our organization increased in direct proportion to our phenomenal membership growth in Japan. This was in exact accord with the sutra's prediction that its practitioners would encounter slander and abuse in the evil age after the Buddha's passing. Mr. Toda remained unperturbed by these events, remarking calmly, "They write sensational articles about us because they know it will boost their sales. They can't possibly surprise us with anything they write because they haven't the least clue what they're writing about." And he declared, "We of the Soka Gakkai have faith. We have the Gohonzon. Everything we have achieved is a result of the benefit of our faith in the Gohonzon. Faith is at the heart of everything. Remaining steadfast in our Buddhist practice is what matters. With this invincible conviction, the Soka Gakkai has achieved victory after victory. Irrespective of the times or circumstances, we will win in the end as long as we never discard our faith." Bottom of page 150, second column. "Truly noble are those who uphold and propagate the law with selfless dedication." Continuing from the Gosho, the annotations on the Nirvana Sutra states, "One's body is insignificant while the law is supreme. One should give one's life in order to propagate the law. Because my life is insignificant, I am struck and hated. But because the law is supreme, it will spread without fail. If the Lotus Sutra spreads, my mortal remains will be respected, and if my remains are respected, they will benefit the people. Then I will come to be revered as highly as the great Bodhisattva Hachiman is now. You should understand that at that time, the men and women who supported me will be honored as greatly as Takanauchi and Wakamiya. The ultimate," continuing with President Keita's Gosho lecture, page 151, first column. "The ultimate spirit of faith in Buddhism is summed up in the words, 'One's body is insignificant while the law is supreme. One should give one's life in order to propagate the law.' Sounds over the top, but it isn't. One's body is insignificant while the law is supreme, which can also be expressed as valuing the law more highly than one's life, refers to the spirit of ceaselessly protecting and propagating the correct teaching. Similarly, one should give one's life in order to propagate the law, refers to devoting oneself selflessly to spreading the law. Nichiren Daishonin indicates to Nichimyo that he has always dedicated himself to his struggle with precisely this commitment. He also declares that he is undeterred by any criticism,
because his body is insignificant, and that he is unafraid of any hostility because the law itself is supreme. Consequently, he says, there is not the slightest doubt that the correct teaching will spread. The law, the ultimate truth or reality, is eternal and indestructible. Accordingly, if there are individuals willing to give their all to spreading the law, Kosen Rufu can definitely be realized. On the other hand, if there is no one willing to spread the law with such a selfless, ungrudging spirit, then Kosen Rufu will end up an empty dream. Who was it that strove all out for Buddhism? Nichiren and his followers. If the mystic law is great, then those who spread it are also great. The Daishonin says that if through his selfless efforts he succeeds in propagating the law, then his life will be forever adorned with the immeasurable benefit that derives from that action. He also promises that the disciples who have supported him throughout will likewise enjoy everlasting good fortune and benefit. This confident declaration that Nichiren and his disciples dedicating their lives to widely propagating the mystic law are unimaginably noble must have deeply moved and inspired Nichimyo anew. Let us, too, embrace the Daishonin's wholehearted commitment to protecting and propagating the law as the guiding spirit of Kosen Rufu and make it the foundation of our own Buddhist practice. This is the Soka Gakkai spirit. Naturally, selfless dedication to propagating the law in Nichiren Buddhism is in no way indicates a feudalistic self-annihilation or self-sacrifice for some greater public good. Buddhism's purpose is to help all people attain genuine happiness and thereby transform the karma of humankind. On an individual level, by sharing the mystic law with others, we can change our own karma and fundamentally transform our state of life. I've seen it personally. Such efforts represent the surest and most direct path to realizing happiness for ourselves and others. That's the way it turned out for me. The SGI is striving for Kosen Rufu in the same spirit of selfless dedication to the law as Nichiren. And just as he declares that his disciples will be greatly honored by future generations, all who practice with the SGI will likewise command eternal respect and admiration. And by being the disciple to Daisaku Ikeda that I am, I include myself in that, even though I make clear that I'm not doing this as part of the SGI. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I don't exclude myself from that statement of SGI membership. In light of the principles of Buddhism, each SGI member, or people that practice the correct teaching with the mentor, is a unique and amazing individual possessing the noblest of missions. Continuing on page 152, great benefits derive from opening the eyes of people throughout the world. The benefit that comes from the opening of the eyes of even one blind person are beyond description. This is from the Gosho again. How then is it possible to describe the benefits that derive from opening the blind eyes of all the Japanese people and from giving the gift of sight to all human beings throughout Japadvipa and the 3 other continents? Continuing with President Ikeda's lecture on page 152, first column, bottom of the page. This passage indicates the great benefits obtained by those who promote Kosen Rufu with selfless dedication. To embrace faith in the Lotus Sutra means to open one's eyes. It means removing the veil of illusion that has kept one's eyes closed and seeing the truth and essence of all things. The benefit that comes from opening the eyes of even one person blinded by illusion is incalculable. How vast, then, is the benefit of opening the eyes of all people in the country of Japan? And how even more indescribable is the benefit of opening the eyes of all humankind? Nichiren Daishonin accomplished this momentous undertaking which he had vowed to fulfill by establishing the means by which all people could attain enlightenment. He speaks of giving the gift of sight to all human beings throughout Japadvipa and the other 3 continents. From these words we can discern the lofty state of life, the Daishonin, who took the lead of Kosen Rufu from a global perspective. Today, just as 700 years ago, humankind is in need of a fundamental guiding philosophy that can serve to awaken or open the eyes of the people. Such a philosophy is found in the Lotus Sutra's teachings of universal enlightenment and the respect for all people. This philosophy holds that when we rise above differences of ethnicity and culture, this philosophy holds that when we rise above differences of ethnicity and culture and discard all barriers, any reason we might think of to keep that separation going, we can come to see that all people inherently possess the same noble Buddha nature and have been born in this world to fulfill their highest potential. Every person is worthy of supreme respect. And when each person brings his or her innate Buddhahood to shine to the fullest, the world will change. A great human revolution in the life of just one person can change the world's destiny. It is the SGI that is spreading the humanistic Buddhism of Nichiren Daishonin based on the Lotus Sutra's ideals of the sanctity of life and the nobility of all people. Our movement represents an unprecedented effort to open the eyes of people around the globe, an undertaking that we are determined to continue until all humanity has been awakened and misfortune and misery have been eradicated from the face of the earth. Already Soka Gakkai is a world affair, declared British historian Arnold J. Toynbee several decades ago in a foreword. In a foreword he contributed to Volume 1 of the English edition of my novel, The Human Revolution. He also wrote, Nichiren loved his country, but his horizon and his concern were not bounded by Japan's coasts. Nichiren held that Buddhism, as he conceived it, was a means for salvation for his fellow human beings everywhere. In working for the human revolution, Soka Gakkai is carrying out Nichiren's mandate. Further, after commenting on the legacy of our first and second presidents, Tanesaburo Makaguchi and Josei Toda, Dr. Toynbee made the following observations. What have been the causes of Soka Gakkai's triumphant post-war success? The fundamental cause was the faith which this community and its leaders in our time have been inspired by the founder Nichiren, whose spirit is still potent in the 7th century after his death. This faith had given them the courage and constancy to endure persecution, and the sincerity that they have demonstrated by their endurance has opened their countrymen's hearts and minds to this teaching and has helped to win Soka Gakkai its huge increase in members. Dr. Toynbee's words reflect a profound understanding of our movement. He was a person of keen insight. Let us continue this dramatic and joyful march of the people, deeply reflecting on the expansive life state of Nichiren, who aspired for the realization of worldwide Kosen-Rufu. Let us continue moving forward, always maintaining our direct connection to him and basing ourselves on his writings. Always maintaining our direct connection to him and basing ourselves on his writings. Nichiren is the mentor. This is the honorable mission of the SGI, which is determined to take responsibility for the future of our world. In matters of Buddhism, the words of the sutras are what must come first. At the bottom of page 153, second column, going back to the Gosho. I may be a foolish man, but I am surely not inferior to a fox or a demon. The noblest people in the present age are in no way superior to Chakra or the Boy Snow Mountains, yet because of my low social position, they have rejected my wise words. That is why the country is now on the brink of ruin. How lamentable. People throughout the land relentlessly harassed and persecuted Nichiren Daishonin, who was striving valiantly as a sovereign, teacher, and parent to the country. Some maligned him because of his low social position. In several writings, Nichiren describes others disparaging him as a person of humble position. On establishing the correct teaching of the peace of the land, page 17 of WND 1. He says, or person of no more than noble station in life, from another Gosho. But he was proud of his origins, describing himself as the son of commoner parents, or as born as poor, or pardon me, or as born poor and lowly to a Chandala family. The malicious words of those who speak ill of Nichiren only expose their own ugly snobbery and prejudice. In the Supremacy of the Law, Nichiren dismisses their jeers by citing the examples of Chakra, who respectfully learned Buddhism from a fox, and the boy Snow Mountains, who took a demon as his teacher just to discover the Buddha way. He rebukes his critics by saying that to devalue a teaching based on the teacher's outward status is to reject the conduct of such admirable models of seeking spirit as Chakra and Snow Mountains. In conversation between a sage and an unenlightened man, Nichiren states, in matters of Buddhist doctrines, one cannot jump to conclusions simply on the basis of the immanence of the person involved. The words of the sutras are what must come first. In Buddhism, the standard is always the superiority and depth of the teaching, and not the social status of the person who teaches or spreads it. Don't judge people based on their dress or appearance. You cannot possibly tell from such things how someone will turn out in the future or what mission they might have. This was Mr. Toda's strict injunction. Social position, titles, academic degrees, and the like are irrelevant in the realm of the Soka Gakkai. Truly respectworthy are those who have a seeking spirit and faith. Furthermore, it is vital that we treasure those who take action for Kosen Rufu. These must forever remain our guiding principles. And this is the end. Citadels of the people built through the bonds of mentor and disciple. From the Gosho, what I find even sadder is that I will be unable to save those disciples of mine who have pitied my sufferings. If anything at all happens, please come over here. I will welcome you. Let us die of starvation together among the mountains. And I would imagine that your daughter Oto has become a fine, intelligent girl. I will write you again. Top of page 155, first column. How lamentable, Nichiren Daishonin says, regarding those who slandered him. At the same time, he expresses deep sadness over the plight of his disciples who had striven alongside him, a reflection of his great compassion and concern for them. He knew that as inhabitants of a country receiving general punishment for its slander of the law, they could not avoid being caught up in the confusion that swirled through society. This concern for others is the fundamental spirit of Nichiren Buddhism. The Daishonin's concern was of such sensitivity and breadth that it deeply touched people's hearts. That concern is the very essence of his teaching, which places the utmost importance on human conduct. He also extends his all-embracing compassion to Nichimyo and her daughter. I would imagine that your daughter Oto has become a fine, intelligent girl, he tells her, and he urges the two to join him at Minobu should the Mongols invade. I will welcome you, he says warmly. Let us die of starvation together among the mountains. Such are the lengths to which Nichiren goes to encourage this sincere follower caring for her young child. Buddhism is not sentimentalism, self-pity, or shallow sympathy. Let me say it again. Buddhism is not sentimentalism, self-pity, or shallow sympathy. Nichiren spoke of giving the gift of sight to all human beings throughout Jampadvipa and the other 3 continents. As these words indicate, he dedicated his life to widely propagating the mystic law and expounding the correct teaching with the world as his stage, and he steadfastly refused to be defeated by the life-threatening persecutions that assailed him. He possessed the resolute strength to uphold the truth without wavering and the warmth to embrace all people, the vigorous spirit to refute falsehood, mark, and the compassion to embrace others, in other words, are 2 sides of the same coin. Genuine humanism lies in having both qualities. The Daishonin and Nichimyo shared a pure and solid bond of mentor and disciple. Nichiren had forged such spiritual bonds with many followers. No devilish power or authority could sever these bonds, which had survived countless hardships and persecutions. The unity of people bound by the shared commitment of mentor and disciple in faith is the great, eternally indestructible foundation of Kosen Rufu.
Yes.
And who is he talking about there? He's talking about Nichiren Daishonin. He's talking about your relationship with the Gohonzon. All of us. I'll say it again. The Daishonin and Nichimyo shared a pure and solid bond of mentor and disciple. Nichiren had forged such spiritual bonds with many followers. No devilish power or authority could sever these bonds, which had survived countless hardships and persecutions. All of them had taken a lot of shit too. They may not have been exiled, but they had fiefs confiscated. They were persona non grata. To be the Daishonin's disciple with this kind of faith, that kind of a follower, correcting people, doing shakabuku. They had all survived countless hardships and persecutions. The unity of people bound by the shared commitment of mentor and disciple in faith is the great, eternally indestructible foundation of Kosen Rufu. All right? We have built magnificent citadels of the people around the globe, but we have just begun. Before us lies the true stage for propagating the law in order to bring happy smiles to the faces of many new Nichimyos and Otos, mothers and children, throughout the world. Goethe declared that life is a constant struggle. He wrote, "This is the highest pitch of wisdom. He alone deserves his life and liberty, who every day must fight for them. Such a swarming I should like to see stand on a free ground with a people who are free." Mr. Makaguchi cherished the following, page 156, the end. Mr. Makaguchi cherished the following saying from the Confucius classic, The Great Learning. "Renew yourself each day, and do so day after day. Let there be daily renewal. Let's ready ourselves for fresh challenges. Everything lies before us." In closing, I present to you the words of indomitable conviction by Mr. Toda, which remain forever engraved in my heart. The Soka Gakkai will transform this troubled world we live in. Let's rouse our courage, unite, and forge ahead on the great path of Kosen Rufu. And he ends this to you, wonderful women throughout the world. He says, President Keita ends this, "With my prayers especially for the happiness of the Noble Women's Division and Young Women's Division members in Japan and throughout the world." Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.